All right, welcome to the No Nonsense podcast. I'm Caleb Nunn. This is where we talk sports the way normal people actually talk about sports. No yelling, no fake outrage, no hot take theater, just what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking, and what actually matters. If this is your first time here, thanks for checking it out. If you've been here before, you already know what it is, baby. Let's get into it. We're going to start things off here in the world of Chel with the Dallas Stars. Now, the Dallas Stars ran into a tough assignment against the Tampa Bay Lightning, one of the most dominant road teams in the league, and, well, the final score doesn't fully capture how competitive parts of this game actually were. Dallas came out with the right mindset early. Hustle, grit, a willingness to crash the crease paid off with a greasy opening goal that snuck past Andrei Vasilevsky. That kind of effort is exactly what this team needs to lean into. Even on the power play against Tampa's top three penalty kill, the Stars showed they could enter the zone cleanly. But then it was like they got there and collectively went, all right, boys, mission accomplished, and the whole thing kind of fizzled out. The inability to sustain possession and generate layered pressure kept them from capitalizing. At even strength, there were stretches where Dallas looked like the better team, particularly that stretch where it was 4-on-4, but Vasilevsky was the difference. High danger chances were there, net front presence was there, and players like Wyatt Johnston continue to be a real problem for opposing goalies. The physical edge showed up too, highlighted by moments like when Maverick Bork threw that monster of a reverse hit and laid that dude out. And I'm telling you, that kind of edge changes the tone. You can't play soft, polite hockey and expect to beat a team like Tampa or really any of the top competitive teams. They'll skate right through you like you're not even there. But as the game wore on, the familiar cracks started to show. Puck management slipped, zone clears became an issue, and defensive structure eroded under sustained pressure. Tampa capitalized. Not because Dallas was completely outplayed, but because Dallas stopped doing the little things consistently. Odd man rushes, missed assignments, and passive coverage left Jake Ottinger facing second and third chances he never should have had to deal with. Once the Stars fell behind, they struggled to regain control, and the game ultimately slipped away in a 4-1 loss. Now, the real concern here is that this game wasn't an outlier. The Stars are stuck in a stretch where their biggest issue isn't talent, it's consistency. They can look engaged, physical, and dangerous for long stretches and then suddenly flip to passive, sloppy, and reactive hockey. The gap between their best shifts and their worst shifts is far too wide. That's how you end up losing games you shouldn't and then playing almost hockey against teams you have to beat. Defensively, transition play continues to be a problem. Poor puck decisions and slow support through the neutral zone are leading directly to odd man rushes and extended time in their own end. The penalty kill has leaned heavily on Ottinger to bail them out, and while he's been pretty good, it's just not a sustainable formula. It's not a game plan. It's a cry for help, and that's not completely absolving Ottinger either. There have been some absolute muffins that he's just let through for some reason. But you can't put the blame solely on him when the defense can't hold up their end of the bargain and just allow too many chances. They can't control the rebounds, they can't get it out, and then try to get an offensive spark. Because offensively, the chances are there, but without sustained pressure, layered forechecks, and second efforts around the net, elite goaltenders like Vasilevsky are going to win that battle more often than not. What makes this stretch frustrating is that it isn't opponent specific. The Stars have struggled against both bottom tier teams and top end contenders. That tells you the issue isn't matchup, it's execution, urgency, and identity. This team doesn't need to reinvent itself, it just needs to commit to playing physical, connected hockey for a full 60 minutes every night. Until they do, games like this will keep slipping away, regardless of how good the effort looks in flashes. So, while the Dallas Stars continue to search for consistency and a full 60-minute identity on the ice, it's, hard not to notice a familiar theme playing out across the stadium. Because when you shift from the rink to the hardwood, the questions don't really change, despite there being a vast difference between them. Health, structure, accountability, and whether flashes of promise are enough to carry a team through a long season. That brings us to the Dallas Mavericks, a franchise navigating its own transition period that's caught between hope for the future and the harsh realities of the present. The Mavericks, they don't look good. And somehow at the same time, they still show flashes. Honestly, that's kind of the worst place to be, because the next few years are almost guaranteed to come with immense growing pains. This franchise is transitioning from being built around Luka Doncic to now being built around Cooper Flag. That's not a smooth handoff. It's not a clean reset, and it's definitely not happening under ideal conditions. Um, right now, Cooper Flagg is listed as day to day after the ankle sprain he suffered against Denver, and he is questionable again for tomorrow's game against the New York Knicks. And yeah, the injuries matter, but what matters more is what he's been doing when he's actually on the floor. Over his last 10 games, let's see, he's averaged roughly 18, 6, and 5 at only 19 years old. The production is already brushing against the type of teenage impact we've only seen from a handful of guys ever, including LeBron. And no, I'm not saying he is LeBron. I'm just saying when you're a teenager putting up those kind of all around numbers, the comparisons naturally start floating around because the list of people who've done it is basically a short paragraph. It's not a throwaway comparison. Unlike a lot of teenage rookies, guys like even Kobe, Kevin Garnett, or Tracy McGrady, they were eased in slowly with some limited responsibility while Flagg's already handling real offensive duties while still impacting the game defensively. And even when you put him next to Luka Doncic, as much as it hurts, Luka Doncic entered the league at 19 years old with years of high-level EuroLeague professional experience. Flagg's production, it stands out for its rawness and difficulty. This is a 19-year-old with no prior pro background doing this nightly against NBA defenses. That's not normal. That's rare. But here's where the optimism starts running into reality. The Dallas Mavericks are staring down a looming salary cap crisis driven by massive, largely immovable contracts tied to unreliable availability. And it all starts with Anthony Davis. Honestly, even an optimistic outcome, something like 25 to 30-ish games played out of 82 would probably qualify as a successful season at this point, and even that feels generous. Then there's Kyrie Irving. The team is betting heavily on him returning from a major lower body injury at an age where his game, that's been built on elite quickness, burst, and ball handling, historically declines the fastest. Expecting Kyrie to come back and be a high impact player is kind of like praying you win the lottery without ever buying a ticket. That's not pessimism, that's just the math. And then you take a step back and you take a look at the Mavericks draft situation. Now, over the next 4 or 5 years, Dallas has very limited draft capital, which is the result of aggressive win now trades. Now, here's what that actually looks like. In 2027, Charlotte has their first round pick, should it fall outside of a top 2 pick. In 2028, Oklahoma City has swap rights, and then by 2029, it gets messy fast with pick mechanics and obligation and the kind of stuff that sounds more like a law school exam than, you know, draft capital and rebuilding. Which means that after next season, the Mavericks are looking at years where they either don't fully control their own first round pick or they're stuck operating under swap pressure and limited flexibility. That leaves them with very little access to young, cost controlled talent and very little trade flexibility to offset expensive aging and frequently unavailable stars. That's how teams get stuck quietly, expensively, and for a long time. Outside of Cooper Flagg and Derek Lively, there just aren't many young players on this roster that inspire real confidence as long term stabilizers. And even with Lively, early durability concerns are starting to creep in, which makes optimism feel fragile at best. The Mavericks are deep in cap hell, light on draft assets, and boxed into a future where meaningful upgrades are incredibly hard to come by. There are flashes of hope, but they're dimmed by the fear that Flagg, the one true foundational piece, could spend too long stuck in competitive mediocrity before the franchise can finally claw its way out of a predicament largely created by the short sighted win now decisions of Nico Harrison. So, while the Mavericks are trying to navigate a messy transitional period and, man, juggling cap constraints, injuries, and the pressure of not wasting a generational young talent, the uncomfortable truth is that this feeling isn't exclusive to one team in this city. Because when you shift from the hardwood to the gridiron, the themes don't really change. Talent misalignment, structural issues, and big expectations falling short. And that brings us to the Dallas Cowboys, a franchise that once again gave us plenty to talk about, just not for the reasons anyone was hoping for. Now, the Dallas Cowboys did, well, Dallas Cowboys things this year. Another empty season, another year with way too much offensive talent to not even sniff the playoffs, and yet here we are. After the blockbuster decision to ship Micah Parsons to Green Bay in an effort to finally address the run defense and stabilize the front seven, I'll admit, I was cautiously optimistic. They made a conscious decision to stop the run. And yet, even after those moves, the Cowboys finished as the 23rd ranked team against the run. That alone is bad enough, but when you pair that with a steep drop down to 21st in pressure percentage against opposing quarterbacks, the outcome was inevitable. That combination, you can't stop the run, can't pressure the quarterback, your defensive backs gave up more passing yards than any other defensive back core in the league. That's how seasons die. Now, as a surprise to absolutely no one, except for maybe Matt Eberflus himself, who honestly seems like he could be the oblivious type, the Cowboys, they parted ways with him at the end of the season. The real question now is this. Who steps in that can actually hold this defense accountable? Who can maximize the addition of Quinnen Williams, who is a great D tackle? Who can help this team actually apply pressure to opposing quarterbacks instead of just talking about it? Now, I can agree with moving on from certain players, even guys that are bigger named. But what the Cowboys got in return didn't really match what they gave away. With Parsons specifically, it might sound old school, but it does matter to me. When you're spending your time doing podcasts with your opponents, even after losing to them, it just rubs me the wrong way. And yes, I know the irony of a podcaster criticizing podcasts is not lost on me, but if you're going to do that stuff, save it for the off season. Like Baker Mayfield talked about this earlier this year when he was talking about Mark Andrews. Now, Baker Mayfield and Mark Andrews were teammates back in Oklahoma. They're really good friends. Like Mark Andrews was literally a groomsman in his wedding. But he talked about it and said that during the season, they don't talk. During the season, they're not friends. Andrews has one goal, one focus, and one priority. That's winning. And that mindset just feels like a bygone era because even now, you've got guys like Marlon Humphrey doing shows during the regular season, even after he got burnt toast on national television. That would have never flown in the days of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed on that Baltimore team. But I digress. For all their faults, the offense produced. It was the defense that sold. Across nearly every major metric, the Cowboys' defense ranked at or near the bottom of the league, while the offense consistently sat closer to the top. That's not bad luck, that's imbalance. So, the Cowboys, some of their biggest needs are pretty clear right now. Defensive backs, edge rushers, and they need a true middle linebacker, a field general who can command the defense and make real time adjustments. The interior defensive line has talent, but it has no direction. With no ability to plug gaps or stop the run, the linebackers were getting terrorized by unblocked linemen. That's just not sustainable football. And as far as the defensive backs goes, man, there's no excuses. They give up more explosive big plays than almost anyone in the league. Yes, pressure helps coverage, but you still have to cover and you still have to tackle, and they were trash in the open field. And yes, I am looking straight at you, Trayvon Diggs. This is exactly why, when the Cowboys are on the clock come draft day, if someone like David Bailey is available, he has to be seriously considered. This defense doesn't just need another body, it needs disruption. Bailey isn't a traditional traffic cop middle linebacker who's going to stand there and make every call. That's not his game. But what he is an explosive downhill defender whose entire skill set is built around creating chaos. His first step quickness, his ability to attack the gaps, and his natural feel for timing pressures immediately force offenses to account for him on every snap. Given what we've already talked about, the inability to stop the run, the lack of consistent pressure, and the failure to dictate terms defensively, passing on a player whose strength is blowing up plays before they develop would be hard to justify. Bailey doesn't need to be the quarterback of the defense. You just need to pair him with a smart, vocal middle linebacker who can handle the communication and adjustments, and suddenly, Bailey can do what he does best: hunt. He stresses protections, forces quarterbacks to move, and changes how offenses build their game plan. Right now, the Cowboys need someone who can flip momentum and tilt the field, not just survive snap to snap. That is why someone like Alex Anzalone makes sense. No, he's not elite in coverage, but his football IQ is high. He's smart, he's got high play recognition, he's a secure tackler who takes good angles. Most importantly, he can organize the defense. That kind of leadership, that type of IQ, it doesn't cost top of market money for him specifically, but it raises everyone else's floor, especially the more physically gifted players around him. Now, none of this is going to be easy. The Cowboys are in a tight salary cap situation right now with Dak's deal, some of the other high end contracts, and of course, prior restructures that are suffocating the team right now. Unfortunately, they'll need more restructures. They'll need to do some selective extensions to try to lessen the load of the salary cap in this coming season, and likely they're going to have to make some tough decisions on some aging veterans. But they do have draft capital. Their pick is pick 12 in the draft. They also, with that Micah Parsons trade, got pick 20 in the first round. And if, and it is a big if, they make the right decisions instead of the flashy ones, they get the coordinator right, they draft disruption, they had leadership, even under the tight circumstances, the Cowboys could be back in contention as early as next year. And if all of that sounds familiar, welcome to being a sports fan in North Texas. One team stuck in cap gymnastics, searching for accountability and leadership on defense, and another staring at the fallout of win now decisions that didn't age the way anyone hoped. The Cowboys spent the year wasting offensive production while the defense collapsed. The Rangers just lived through the opposite. Elite pitching and defense completely undone by an offense that couldn't get out of its own way. Different sports, same thing. Missed balance, missed windows, and big questions about direction. So with football in the rearview mirror for now, let's shift over to the diamond, because the Texas Rangers are at a crossroads of their own, and the way they respond after that 2023 high might define the next several years of baseball in Arlington. Now, the Texas Rangers have fallen off hard since their near miraculous World Series victory in 2023, and what makes it so frustrating is how it happened. Last season was an offensive disaster, one that completely wasted what was arguably the most dominant pitching and defensive performance in franchise history. This was a team that won the Gold Glove Award as the team, and they still couldn't even sniff the playoffs? It's almost unheard of. What makes it even stranger is that heading into last season, pitching was supposed to be the question mark. How would DeGrom be able to perform coming off his injury? Could Nathan Eovaldi continue his dominance and truly establish himself as the ace? Would the depth hold up? Could the bullpen survive? And yet, despite all of that, the pitching showed up. The offense didn't. The one thing that was supposed to be secure is the thing that failed. Now, after the season, the Rangers wasted no time making moves, but most of them were subtractions. Adolis Garcia, the ALCS MVP from that World Series run, was non-tendered. Jonah Heim, they also separated ways, and I'll be honest, that one stings a little bit. I really like Jonah, but I can also understand that his time here had run its course. Now, I'm not convinced that Higashioka is the long-term answer, but he is a more serviceable option, and the fact that it's been reported and you can see in the games that the pitchers preferred him behind the dish speaks for itself. That matters. But then came the trade that shocked everybody, bringing in Brandon Nimmo. And the more you peel it back, the more it makes sense. The Rangers didn't just move on from Marcus Semien because of production, they moved on because chemistry was becoming an issue. By multiple reports, there was growing tension between Semien and Corey Seager, rooted in differences in style and in their approach. While Seager may be more injury prone, when he's healthy, he's undeniable. Semien, on the other hand, is older, declining, coming off a season where availability was really the only positive he had. And a 233.05, 364 stat line is simply not acceptable for who he was supposed to be. With that, he was the odd man out. When you combine that with the Jake Berger trade, Jock Peterson being brought in, honestly felt like everything that could have gone wrong did. I mean, Peterson came in saying the West runs through Texas and then proceeded to bat 181 through the 96 games that he played with only 9 home runs and 26 RBIs. They brought him in to be a left-handed power bat. That's not what you sign a left-handed power bat to do. That was a brutal miss, like most of his at-bats. That said, the Rangers have already started trying to fix the chemistry and balance issues. The Semien for Nimmo trade helps immediately. Nimmo is a well rounded left handed bat who should boost the on base percentage, which is a massive need for a team that lived in boom or bust mode last year, where if the ball didn't leave the yard, well, the offense just stalled out. Uh, they also added Danny Jansen, brings a strong defensive fundamentals, good blocking, and a respectable on base ability. He's not a flashy catcher, but he is an upgrade that doesn't sacrifice defense for offense, and well, that matters too. Internally, there are some intriguing pieces here. Josh Smith was one of the few bright spots last year. I mean, he did just about everything that was asked of him, filling in for the perpetually injured Josh Young. Cody Freeman showed a couple of flashes, though the sample size is still small, and Ezekiel Duran's fine in a pinch, but he's not the guy you want for a full time role. Right now, it looks like Josh Smith will likely take the primary second base duties with Freeman and Duran ready to rotate, especially if Smith needs to slide over to third in the event that Young gets hurt again, or just that he struggles. And yes, spring training will ultimately sort this out. Newsflash, breaking news, grass is green, water is wet, but this matters. Second base is a true vacuum post Marcus Semien, and how that shakes out will define the infield. Now, first base is another question mark. Is Jake Berger ready to reestablish himself as a legitimate power bat, or does somebody like Justin Foscue get a real opportunity? Now, his natural position is second base, but his versatility keeps him in the conversation. The Rangers have depth, it's just about whether it's ready depth. They also have depth that is versatile and can move around multiple positions. So they definitely have options. Now, outfield wise, the foundation is solid. Evan Carter, Brandon Nimmo, and Wyatt Langford give you a pretty strong everyday core, with Osuna providing upside depth. Nimmo's veteran presence should actually be huge for guys like Carter, Langford, and Osuna as they continue to develop. But where does that leave us? The Rangers team, they're not a World Series contender this year, but the foundation is there to get back into the playoff mix. With Chris Young continuing to reshape the roster and a new coaching staff in place, the hope is that the organization stabilizes, the offense finds an identity, and the Rangers start trending upward again. They don't need miracles anymore, they just need competence and consistency. Now, that's going to do it for this one. Seriously, thank you for tuning in, because if nobody was listening, I'd just be yelling into the void, and I can already do that for free anyway. I want to hear what you think. Good takes, bad takes, and the ones that make me shake my head a little bit. If there's a team, a topic, or something you want me to dive deeper into, man, let me know. This show exists because of the back and forth, so keep it coming. I appreciate y'all, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.